Colette, can you hear us? Um,
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hear me?
and yes, we can hear you. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna start in like 5 minutes. So,
Okay. Okay.
They're saying I'm really season here, perfect. Yes. But then we didn't see it there. And then the city. And follow to one dining was not. And the second question is about one partnerships. And I'd love to see bucket it with just a ton of action. And think they're going. Yes, yes. Just fine. I didn't really in my. You just hear from maybe the stuff. So they can focus on it.
Can you hear me? Hey, all right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you so much for being here with us today for this session. We're really excited to have some amazing guests here, guest speakers, as we talk through the role that schools play at the heart of both climate resilient education systems and also climate smart food systems. So during this session, what we're really hoping to do is to really think about the role of schools and education systems in terms of the transition to just and green economies, and increase awareness of the impact of homegrown school feeding initiatives, both on the well-being of children as well as in terms of mitigating against climate action, against climate change, and also as well the potential for system-wide transformation in terms of scaling up ongoing projects and how those can be replicated and scaled for larger impact. And then also think about the other actions going on in schools to make more climate resilient education systems and curricula, and also how that can be scaled up, and looking at the role that schools play at the center of these two systems. So to start us off, we're really, really excited to welcome our opening remarks from the Minister of Education from Malawi, Minister Madalitso Pamboa Wirima. She's a minister who's made significant contributions to the public education sector in the Republic of Malawi. With a strong background in economics and governance, she's been a driving force behind various initiatives aimed at promoting growth at the nexus of national development and education. Her visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to the betterment of Malawian school children has earned her widespread respect and admiration, including ours. Welcome, Honorable Minister.
Good afternoon. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express, first and foremost, my gratitude to the organizers of this event for inviting Malawi to be part of it. For without them, we would not be here. A special thank you to the Global Partnership for Education and Sarah Beardmore for coordinating us very well. Talking about children, youth, schools, and sustainability makes me feel at home. And as you know, home is where the heart is. Ladies and gentlemen, school is a nucleus for human enlightenment and the cradle for progress. If you want the world to have 21st century skills, take them to school. If you want your discovery of electricity, the steam engine, and the stem cell, carbon dating, mathematical theory of the orbits, grafting of fruits, and fashioning of designer brands, you take it to school. And boom, it will be everywhere and improving all the time. If you want to solve hunger, human rights abuse, and even the subject of today, which is climate change, where should we begin? I think at school. At school, of course. The school has been overlooked a lot in recent years when the subject of climate change is tabled. It is a puzzle, isn't it? Here, I would like to agree with Catherine Russell, the UNICEF Executive Director, who said at the Transforming Education Summit in September last year, and I quote, "Every child has the right to survive, thrive, and reach their full potential. But they can only realize this right if their schools provide them with a learning environment that promotes their health, nutrition, and well-being." End of quote. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a call to all of us to view the school as the center of growth, proper growth of a child, of a learner. Therefore, the school needs to be safeguarded against the ills of climate change, while also using it as the platform for building a climate-proof society, or better still, a climate-smart planet. And yet the school has not been placed at the center of the climate change crisis, with some using the excuse that it is a cross-cutting issue and it should not necessarily stand as a key pillar even in the global climate financing framework. This is why last year at the Woolton Park in the United Kingdom, I'm told a pseudo think tank gathered to ask the question, why? Why is it that education is often treated like a by the way? Even the year prior in Glasgow, during the COP26, experts observed the need to bring education to the fore when not only discussing climate change, but also designing interventions. COP27 in Egypt last year raised the curtain by featuring climate education adaptation. This year, we should be happy to see that we even have an education week, and this session focusing on the school as the heart of climate resilient education and food systems. Well, game on. What do we mean by that? That schools are at the heart. We do not need a cardiology professor to tell us that when the heart stops, all the systems of the body cease to function. And the right word for it is death. When the heart is not well cared for or is overstressed, it ails, fails, and stalls. Could it be the reason why we have not gained as much from schools when it comes to climate resilient education and food systems? Is this the reason why hunger still persists globally and climate change mitigation is not on course? In our country, we sympathize with the heart and decided to embed climate resilient education and homegrown food solutions in policies, strategies, and plans of our schools. I'm pleased to share with you some of the actions that we are pursuing around schools as the heart. Ladies and gentlemen, when we think about a school, of course, it is the learner, the teacher, and the learning environment, as well as the community support system. I'm glad there's a teacher in this room, because there will not be any learning without you. We value you, and we know that we can take those children into a class, but where a teacher does not exist, there's no learning that takes place. So as climate change attacks schools, it is all these aspects that suffer together. Although they do face the wrath of it to varying degrees, children, girls, and low quality school infrastructure bear the blunt of it. Now, for countries such as our own, Malawi, the impact is disastrous. To demonstrate further that schools are indeed at the heart of human survival, many schools were turned into camps for internally displaced people, also known as IDPCs, accommodating much of the affected population during the deadly cyclone Freddy that we experienced in the country earlier this year. My ministry has short, medium, and long-term plans for recovering from the effects of climate change, and I will highlight some for your appreciation. But as I have said earlier, we are very strategic about our approach. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, what is driving us is a policy stance that we have taken, a systems approach to developing our education system and solving pressing challenges. We are implementing a 5-strand foundational education strategy, also dubbed 5 SAFEs, as follows in somewhat reverse order. Number 1, strand 4 of the 5 steps is to expand school feeding to all public schools in Malawi. Strand 3 is to redesign and improve resourcing of the curriculum, including using available or locally available resources and integrating climate education. Strand 2 is to improve the training and deployment of teachers, which includes making them climate education champions. Strand 1 is to provide the support to teachers in early grade classes, which will ensure that our children have a solid foundation in education to enable them to be climate shock resilient. And strand 5 is digitalization, which includes enhancing decarbonization of education and resilience of schools to shocks imposed by natural disasters. I'm also pleased to report that in line with strand 2, we have initiated a network of teacher climate champions. These are teachers who are promoting innovative approaches to climate resilient education and food systems across the countries. Some of these teacher champions have won regional and global awards, including Teacher Mchesi, whose rural school has planted over 700,000 trees with a target of reaching 1 million soon. Among others, schools have embarked on climate resilience strategies, such as the reproductive school environment concept. This encourages the greening of the schools through establishment of school woodlots, establishment of school orchards, establishing green cover and green pathways around schools. Trees and fruits are important in schools. Trees are used in construction as well as in provision of fuel and wood for cooking, even the school meals. Trees create resilience environment in schools as they protect roofs from strong winds. We usually are challenged with our roofs of the schools being blown off when the rains, on the onset of the rain. So this helps quite a lot. Trees also provide a tranquil environment in schools suitable for studying. Orchards provide fruits, complement school feeding programs, also providing the nutrition that our learners do so require. Talking about school feeding again, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, just to give you a historical perspective, a school meals program, SMP, was initiated in Malawi as a pilot in one of the districts 24 years ago. The program registered an increase in enrollment, attendance, and reduced absenteeism. As such, the program was scaled up and has now reached 42% of the public primary schools. Due to limited resources and perhaps sustainability concerns, you can appreciate that 24 years ago, we really should not be at 42%. Malawi implements 2 models of the school feeding program, namely centralized and 2 homegrown model. The school meals program, as part of the school health and nutrition programming, is one of the government's development agenda, which is hoped to contribute to achieving at least 8 sustainable development goals, SDGs, including provision of quality education. Now we are exploring a new concept called the Community Smart Schools, already implemented in Egypt, which considers the school as a nucleus for coordinated efforts to fight against climate change and foster mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. Other strategies include learner participation through eco clubs, mainstreaming climate change in curricula, in-service trainings for teachers in climate change issues, environmentally friendly infrastructure development. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, if we focused our efforts on building models of school-based climate resilient education and food systems, we would likely spend less money but have more impact in climate change adaptation, mitigation, and resilience building around the world. We would be raising generations that are better informed of the risks and better prepared to mitigate against, adapt to, and be resilient to climate change impacts. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, my ministry on behalf of government led by His Excellency, Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera, exhibits a clear commitment to establishing the school as the center, the heart of climate resilient education and food systems. Today, in this session, I would like to invite us all to discuss how indeed we can tend to the heart, the school, the climate resilient education and food systems development and promotion as we strive together for a better climate smart education outcomes through climate smart education. I thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. It was such a pleasure to hear from you about the commitment of the Malawian government to ensuring that children in schools receive school meals and they're fed and able to focus and learn, and also that your education systems are resilient to the impacts of climate change. And you also shared a little bit about the impact of Cyclone Freddy, and we know that around the world, about 1.3, almost 1.3 billion children are affected by a climate event every year, and that's at a minimum. So we know that the impact is actually much larger than that. So there's a lot that we have to do as a global community. So before we move into the discussion, I just wanted to get a sense of the room. We're all here from different countries, different backgrounds. So we'll just do a quick little raise your hand exercise, just so we get a sense of who we are and our relation to this topic. So how many people here went to a school? Please raise your hand. Please, please, please. Thank you, thank you. And thank you to all our teachers. And some of mine, I think, suffered more than others, but we're thankful to them. How many people here ever had a meal at school, whether you brought it or it was provided by the school? Who ate at school? I ate a lot at school. I needed it to grow. And who here felt more energetic, more able to focus, better able to attend to their studies because you had a meal at school? I mean, if you imagine going through a whole day without any food versus how you felt after a lunch break, who would agree that being able to access food at school made a difference to your ability to learn? It is what it is. So as we can see, this topic is something that is relevant to all of us and really near and dear to our hearts as we think about how we engage with these food systems in school and how we can make them more resilient. And so I'm really excited to welcome some of our speakers who will be joining me for this conversation. We'll start with Esther. Esther Gasiji is a Teach for Kenya fellow and an educator who has been working in underserved communities in Kenya for many years. And she currently works at Mukuru Kwa Njenga Primary School as a climate educator. Welcome, Esther. And joining will be Salha. Salha Aziz is a GP youth leader from Tanzania. She's the founder and executive director of the Binti Salha Foundation. And she's also an SDG champion who advocates for the rights of adolescent girls and young women to quality education and economic freedom and good health. Welcome, Salha. And joining us online, we have Colette. Colette Fox is the head of ProVeg's UK flagship program, School Plates, where she works directly with schools and local authorities across the UK to support their meat reduction efforts by making small changes that make a big difference both to the health of children and also to the needs of schools. Hi, Colette.
Hi,
Glad to have
thanks
you
for
join
having me.
us. So. Can you still? Yeah. No. Okay, question. So I'll stay here. Okay, I guess I'll moderate from here and move a little bit out of the way. So thank you all for joining us today. And so to start, we'd just love to hear from each of you a little bit more about yourself and about the work you do on bringing together climate resilient education and food systems. So if you could share about your work and a little bit about the ways in which your work has impacted students, schools, and communities. And we'll start with you, Esther.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Esther Gashigi. I'm a Teach for Kenya fellow working in one of the underserved communities in Kenya. And I grew up in one of Kenya's food basket areas. I remember spending almost every Saturday in the garden, and we had reliable rainfall. So we had plenty of food. So we accessed food at home and at school. And then this all of a sudden changed in 2008 when we had a severe drought for 2 years. And there was food poverty and suffering in my community. But the sad part is at school, I never learned what was happening, why it was happening, and how to protect myself and my family from such impacts. And then in 2020, Kenya experienced the same thing again. Kenya experienced drought. And this time it lasted longer and it was harsher. It lasted for 3 years. So Kenya's food basket areas were heavily impacted. They received erratic rainfall, and we had poor agricultural produce that led to food insecurity and high food prices. So these impacts, the people who are mostly affected by these impacts were people in underserved communities. So our school, Kwanjenga, as you've heard, is in an underserved community. And the impacts of this drought could be seen in our school. We had learners who came to school hungry and others who missed school completely to go and search for food, fend for themselves somehow. But the sad bit is, again, just like 15 years ago, they were not learning about climate change. They were not learning about what it is. And most importantly, they were not being equipped to take any action. So together with other educators, we came together and we asked ourselves, what can we do about this knowledge gap that exists? I mean, it shouldn't exist. From 15 years ago, there should be some changes, but there wasn't any changes. So we decided to engage learners to first build their climate literacy. And then we contextualized climate education. We engaged learners to identify the local impacts that we had. And then we prompted them to really investigate which climate impacts are related directly to their community. And food poverty and water shortages came up. So, but we didn't stop there. The essence of climate education for us was to build student agency. So we prompted them to come up with a solution. And learners came up with an innovative gardening solution where they planted vegetables in recycled containers and in vertical gardens. Then they went ahead and collaborated with teachers and the school administration to engage the community. You remember water shortage was a challenge. They engaged community members to dig a borehole for the school so that learners can have access to water and vegetables, access to water, and the vegetables can get water during dry spells. And then they went ahead and collaborated with the local NGOs in our area who work with the Ministry of Education to install 2 greenhouses at our school. These greenhouses use smart agriculture where they use minimal resources but have maximum productivity. So learners through this project are able to provide vegetables that complement the school's feeding program. So learners can now access a more nutritious meal at school. And this, of course, impacts the attendance and the performance of learners. They are more motivated to come to school and stay in school. But the really interesting bits that we are seeing through this project is learners are discovering their agency. They're discovering, or they're beginning to shift from the mindset of somebody to come and help. I don't know if there are any Kenyans in the room, but if there are, yeah, we do. When tragedy happens, people usually say serikali saidia, which is Swahili for government help. But we are trying to shift from this mindset, and we're already seeing a shift from this mindset. Learners are beginning to discover that it's really about agency. It's about taking initiative and shaping your own present and shaping your own future. And we're also seeing that certain skills are being nurtured, like, for example, problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, necessary 21st century skills that will allow learners to be successful. So as a school, as a teacher, we are beginning to shift from the mindset of education just being about academics, but we are realizing it's about learners being leaders who can address not just the climate change, but other challenges in their community. They can actively shape their own future. And for us, that is exactly what we set out to do, to build student agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing about that. And you really highlighted, the role of schools and education in terms of how they give children and young people this knowledge and skills and tools to shape their future and to support their communities. So thank you. Saha, the same question to you. We'd love to hear a little bit about your work and the impact that your work has on students and communities.
Okay. Thank you so much, Florenca. Well, I'm Saha Zizi from Tanzania. I'm the executive director for Bin Saha Foundation, a grassroots organization that advocates for adolescent girls and young women's rights to education, health, and economic empowerment. And I'm the GPE youth leader, but also the alumni for the African Union International Center for Women and Girls Education. As for me, one of the things, by the way, I'm a teacher by profession, and I once, you asked the question about having food in school, whether it's provided in school or coming with it from home. And I was born and raised in Tanzania, in town. But when I reached standard 7, my dad decided that I have to shift to the village to support our grandmother. It was me and my cousin's sister. So we moved from Dar es Salaam to Iringa, interior region. So I finished my standard 7 there. And we used to walk 8 kilometers every day to school and coming back home. So you can imagine every break session that we had to go back, eat, and come back to school again. So it was so hard for me. And when I realized that, when I reached in the university and became a student teacher and started to understand the world of education and its importance and advocacy issues, I thought of something like, I can do something, whether I'm small or I'm not. And one of the things that I thought of is initiating this foundation. So this foundation was initiated when I was just a second-year student in University of Dar es Salaam. And one of the things that I was thinking is, as a teacher who is learning about the curriculum, about the student psychology, you know all these challenges when you're in class. And at the same time, majority of kids and children in Tanzania are experiencing that, and I've once experienced that situation of food insecurity, especially when you are at school. So I thought of doing something in raising awareness in schools for the teachers and the students to understand the effects of climate change and food shortage in the community that lead to these students to be at school while hungry. It will be something that impact their activeness in class. If you are in class and you are very hungry, it's very hard to concentrate. So we started this initiative of raising awareness in schools, showing people that even if you are in the education sector, there are other sectors that are contributing to the advancement of that sector. So if we do not discuss about climate change, if we do not discuss about healthy, there are a lot of things will happen. Some applied in school dropout because of pregnancy, something that is contributed by health issues. So we decided to do those kind of initiatives in schools in partnership with other organizations that are focusing much on climate change, but also capacitating our own staffs in the organization so that when we go to schools, we have enough knowledge when we talk about climate. Before we know that, when we were studying, we were not able to learn beyond about climate change. We were just learning about planting trees and sometimes just planting, not even growing the tree. So that's one of the things that we have been doing. But also in partnership with other big organizations, we have been also advocating for good policies to ensure that we have inclusive education. So we cannot have inclusive education if one child can come at school with a lunchbox and the other one is staying at school with empty schools. They cannot be the same. So we have been engaging with big organizations like ActionAid, like World Vision, in programs that, as they have resource, we don't have resource, but we have the capacity to reach schools and support the region. awareness raising programs and advocacy programs as well by entering in the rooms, talking to government, lobbying and staffs. So we've been working together with this organization to ensure that we have good policy that will support these school programs, especially the school feeding program, but also the climate change situation in the community. Another thing that we have been doing is our program called Supporting Higher Education Program. We started it in 2021. It's not reaching a lot of people yet, but for the small part that we are doing, we believe that there is no 10 without one. So we started fundraising through digital platforms. We got funds that we distributed school materials for students, the less privileged ones, students, but also the food to the community, to the poor families. So we try our best to see how do we support these families to have at least food that cannot lead for them to tell their kids to drop out from school and engage into income generating activities that will also impact education as well, as we will have a lot of school dropouts. So in a nutshell, that is what we are doing.
Thank you so much, Saha, for sharing that. And thank you also for making the connection between activities at the community level and also the need for those to be backed by policies and also the need for advocacy so that we have system-wide change. Thank you for that. Over to you, Colette. Would be lovely to hear from you on your work and also a little bit about the global nature of, the work that's being done in terms of school feeding programs.
Perfect. Thank you, Falinka. So I head up ProVeg UK's School Plates programme. This is the focus of our work in the UK. It's an evidence-based programme, and we basically are trying to make school food both healthier for children, and we're trying to make it more planet friendly. And what we mean by this, just to be clear, is we're trying to reduce the meat content. There's a lot of quite unhealthy processed meat on UK school menus, so we're trying to reduce that, make it healthier, make it more planet friendly, and also get more plant-based dishes onto school menus and increase the uptake of those dishes. So in the UK, children are very lucky. They have food available at school, or they can bring their own, and they actually have a choice of dishes. So they get a menu like you would get, not quite like you would get in a restaurant, but we then start to play around with the menus and how those look. So the basis of our program, if you like, is around behavioral nudges. So we're looking at the language that is used on the menus, because we know from research that using more descriptive language increases the uptake of particular dishes. So often the things we don't want children to choose are described really beautifully, really sound very, very tasty. And then the dishes that we want them to choose, perhaps the veggie dishes or the plant-based options, are quite plain sounding, and therefore they don't really get a look in. Children go for the more interesting dish. And we also look at the positioning. So this again is another evidence-based kind of behavioral nudge. We know that if we put the dish we want people to choose, whether it's children or adults, at the top of the menu, they will choose it more often. It's crazy, but it works. So again, we're trying to get those plant-based options moved to the top of the menu. Currently, they're typically the meat or the fish option at the top, and we want to shift that behavior and make that the default option. So we offer free services. We're donor funded, so everything we do is free, and we help any school caterer wherever they are in the UK. They're welcome to take us up on our services, and we basically offer menu review for them, so they can send their menus to us, and we will give them feedback and advice on what to do, what changes they can start to make. We have an award scheme that we launched this year, which is about incentivizing our partners that we work with to continue to make changes and to reward them as they make positive steps. We also create recipes for them, so we make fully plant-based recipes that comply with all the nutrition guidelines that they need to adhere to. And we make sure that children really love the dishes as well, because if they don't, then they simply won't choose it, because remember, they've got a choice of something else. So it's really important, and we test them, and our recipes are eaten by thousands and thousands of children across the UK now, which is incredible. We also train those school caterers, so they're our kind of key audience. When we set the program up, we looked at, do we target and try and influence children, and we decided actually that the people making the food are the most influential, and if we can get them on board and get them to understand why this is so important, they will be our ambassadors, and they will encourage children, and they will educate children as they're serving and making the food. So we provide the recipes and the training, and that builds their confidence. So they often don't get a lot of training. They're kind of quite overlooked often. So we want to get them enthusiastic and, you know, have them feeling inspired that they can do this and that this is a really positive thing. And then the final part of our service, which is again quite a new strand of what we do, as well as us providing support to school caterers, we also have started to bring them all together. So we have an online session once every 3 months, and they come together. So those that are further ahead on this journey and are having success can help the others, and they can share their stories with one another. Perhaps if anybody is struggling with certain aspects of what they're trying to do, they can hear from others how they've overcome it. So they actually support one another in this, which is a really valuable piece of the program. And just in terms of impact, we've made a big impact, actually. It's amazing considering we're a tiny island floating off somewhere in the sea. We started in 2018, and we had one local government partner, so we call them local authorities in the UK. And 6 years later, where we are today, we're now engaged and working with about 25% of all of the local authorities across the UK. And what that equates to is over 6,300 schools that are getting these menus or seeing these new changes on menus. And it means we're influencing over 1 million school meals every day of the week, which is amazing. And on top of that, we've managed to swap around 12 million meals since we started that would have been meat-based that are now either meat-free or plant-based. So we plan to keep going. And yes, we do have a good global perspective, and I'll come on to that a little bit later if that's okay, but I will talk about it. Thanks, Valinka.
So much, Colette, and thanks for sharing a lot about how the work you do matters on a school level, right down to influencing the choices that children make and supporting the caterers. And you did go a little bit into our next discussion question, which will focus on partnerships. And we're going to be thinking about what partnerships have made the work possible. You all have shared some really, really amazing and impactful work. And we also heard from the Honorable Minister about the work going on at the country level in Malawi. So we'd love to hear from you very briefly, because we are now coming up on time. So we'd love to hear from you very briefly what partnerships across organizations, local communities, and also with governments at all levels have made your work possible. And also, again, very briefly, how do you see these partnerships playing a role in terms of scaling up your work? So we'll circle back around to Esther. 1 minute.
Thank you so much for the question. And I really love it because our work is about partnership. So the first partnership that I would like to highlight is partnership with our students. When we first wanted to engage learners in climate education, we seek their feedback, their input first. We wanted them to really have a say on whether this is important or not. And building that understanding created a sense of ownership with them. And it really helped to build their agency. So they're able to do that work by themselves. And another partnership I would like to highlight is partnership with the teachers. So when we realized that there was a knowledge gap, we sought feedback from the teachers too. We wanted to understand, do they think climate education is important for their learners? And many of them said that it is, but there was a gap. because many of them, their training doesn't have climate education. So they felt ill-equipped to engage learners in climate education. So together we co-created a module that we used to train teachers to empower them to incorporate climate education in the classroom. And again, using that module, we highlight the importance of climate education is really agency. It's not really climate literacy. And we have used that module to train 181 teachers. And I think another partnership that has really been pivotal for our work is community. We have partnered with the community to get the borehole and the 2 greenhouses. And I think they've been really helpful to the school, and they're going to help us to scale up. I mean, we're already partnering with teachers in other schools. We train them to engage their learners. And we really want to expand to more schools, especially in underserved communities, because these are the learners who are affected most by climate change. And really, to finish, because I know I'm at the time, I want our work to influence the Ministry of Education. And I'm so glad we have a minister here. Maybe you can put in a good word in Kenya. We want it to be incorporated in the curriculum so that every learner can have access to quality climate education.
What a fabulous goal. And thank you so much. And I think your words are very well aimed. Over to you, Saha.
Thank you so much. As for us in South Foundation, we have been working with community as our first partner, because as I speak, we actually understand the importance of partnership. And even the core word in GPE is the partnership. And as a country that is also under GPE, part of the GPE, we have started this school feeding program under the Ministry of Education. But it will be so hard, and it could be so hard to be implemented if these parents cannot contribute for that food in schools. So for the town schools, they do money contribution. So people give money, the school buy food, they prepare food for kids. But for the rural areas, what they do is contributing crops. So can you imagine a village that doesn't have crops for that year? What will happen to the kids? So no parent will be able to contribute for the food. So for us, raising awareness to the community on the impact of climate change and the importance of the community to do climate smart agriculture is one of the things that we believe helps them contribute to the school feeding program. And I can tell you, this program is doing best in rural areas more than in urban areas, because these parents in rural areas are able to give what they have from just the house, even if they don't have money. But in towns, a bit hard to keep on following up to the parents to give money so that the program can go on. And lastly, we have worked also with World Vision, and we have seen the impact of the project called Sauti Youth, as we did the evaluation, and see how the community has a great role in making sure that education is not affected by climate. Because at the end of the day, these students are going back to the community. So if they do not understand what is going on, that means we'll be having the same generation practicing the same climate that endanger our climate. So the generation to generation will be talking and singing the same song. So awareness raising is our biggest part that we are doing, and we are very grateful that we get a chance to work with other big organizations to ensure that we reach more people and more communities. And even for this project and the World Vision, they actually think of extending to other more regions so that they can tackle this problem of food insecurity in our communities that also impact education in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saha, and also starting to talk about scale. Yes, we can clap for that. And also starting to talk about scale and, starting to replicate your work across other regions of Tanzania and take those solutions beyond even just your immediate community. So thank you for that. And we're really excited to hear more about that, as it continues to grow. Over to you, Colette.
Thank you. I'll be as quick as possible. So I've touched upon it already, but for us, the key partnerships have been local government, simply because they cater for tens and hundreds of schools. So it's very high impact for us, and that continues to remain our focus. But I think as our program has grown and we've kind of built up numbers, it has created this ripple effect. So others see what is happening, and the others and their neighbours and people locally to them are doing this work, and they get on board. So there's been a real shift, and that has opened up us working with individual schools, clusters of schools, and even private catering companies now. So I think for us, it was focusing on one key stakeholder, doing that well, and then expanding to reach all the stakeholders that play a part in this. And then really briefly on scaling up, beyond the UK, we're aware that there's loads of great organisations, whether they are grassroots, whether they're big NGOs, governments, doing similar work for us about getting more children to eat more plant-based food and reducing our meat consumption. So we created this year the Global Plant-Based School Food Network. It's for any organisation, whatever level you're at, who is interested in this and wants that kind of peer-to-peer support. It can be quite isolating doing this work. If you're doing it in your country alone, there's a whole team of us around the world who are doing this. So I would encourage you to get in touch. We've currently got about 80 people joined from over 30 countries across 4 continents and 14 time zones. And we managed to somehow get together and share our stories and discuss and learn from each other. We can all learn something. I think that's my key takeaway from today is, together we can make this happen more quickly. So collaboration is absolutely key. Please get in touch if you're interested in that network. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Colette. And if anyone is interested, we're happy to share that contact information. And thanks for sharing, how your work is going global and the community of practice that you've created, supporting others in this work. And we'll just hear very briefly from another representative from the Malawi Ministry, Madam Chikondano Musa. Would love to hear from you a little bit about the partnerships that the ministry is engaging in doing this work to extend the school feeding program.
For us, our biggest partner is the communities around the schools and the students themselves, because the minister has presented 2 models, the centrally procured corn soya blend and then the homegrown. For the homegrown, it is the communities who are doing this, and this has a wider reach. And when it comes to food preparation, it is the communities that are preparing this food, fetching firewood, walking long distances to go and prepare food at school, saving the food, keeping and wash aspects of school feeding. All this is done by communities. Beyond that, we have big partners like World Food Program. We have UNICEF. We have and UNICEF is through UNICEF. We are also taking a different angle, school feeding, and connecting to issues of mental challenges. And so we have a project which is called Productive Schools, greening school environments and making that we are building, we are planting orchards so that besides the corn soya blend, students can also access fruits from around their school compounds, and that contributes to nutrition of the learners as well. I think I can stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Musa. And so thank you so much to our amazing panelists. I think we can give everybody another round of applause. It was truly, truly a pleasure hearing from you about your work and hearing about all the amazing connections that you have and are building with your communities, local, regional, and national governments, and even going global. And I hope that we all learned a little bit today about the connection between sustainable food systems and also climate resilience schools and climate resilient school systems. Unfortunately, we are out of time and we can't have a Q&A session, but we have so many of our fabulous speakers right here. So please feel free to ask any specific questions. And we also have a few postcards, I think, with some information on the Climate Smart Education Systems Framework that was developed by GPE, that also shares more information across 7 dimensions on making education systems more climate resilient, and shares many, many examples from across different countries, low and lower middle income countries, on how this work is already being done all across the world. So I hope you get a chance to take a postcard and read more about that. Thank you, everyone. And thanks so much to the Food for Climate Pavilion for hosting us.